Hello ladies and gentlemen, and today I will be reviewing Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem, Heroes of Light and Shadow, to be abbreviated as Fire Emblem 12, that's kind of a long title, on the Nintendo DS. It is a remake of Book 2 of Mystery of the Emblem, a game for the SNES that told two stories. Book 1 was an abridged version of Shadow Dragon, and Book 2 is the sequel. Shadow Dragon was already remade for the Nintendo DS 2 years prior. For my view of the game, check out my review of it sometime on my channel. This game was the first since Binding Blade, all the way back in 2002, to be a Japanese exclusive, as the series was at a financial low point. Shadow Dragon had been a remake that was a bit too faithful, lacking some key modern features like a support system between characters and other things. FE12 would try to change that, and many other mistakes made by the previous title. Were they successful? After being victorious in the War of Shadows, the previous war, Marth, king of the island nation of Altea, along with other nations, served the newly crowned Emperor Hardin of Arcania, the power of the continent. Marth is ordered to stop a rebellion in the nation of Grust that was devastated in the last war. Soon, Marth and his army become suspicious of Hardin's decision-making and eventually revolt against one of his commanders. Hardin then seizes control of Altea immediately. For all of you Smash players, this is how Marth earned the title of Betrayed Prince, as Hardin was a trusted comrade of Marth in the previous war. From this point, Marth seeks to reclaim Altea, as well as find out what has happened in the kingdom of Arcania. From a narrative perspective, the sequel is definitely better than the original, as I found the overall story here to be more interesting. However, Marth, in at least the English localizations of Shadow Dragon, Marth felt more like a realistic person, understanding what war entails and isn't afraid to be angry. Marth in this game, however, is pretty much the start of the goody two-shoes lord archetype seen throughout the entire series. Also, new to this game is the Avatar, a unit that is kind of bland, but the story doesn't revolve around him at any point, so at least that's good. Also, support conversations are back, and in an iteration that I like a lot. Units earn support points by simply partaking in the same chapters as one another, and the supports here really give the player a good look at who the characters are. More than a lot of Fire Emblem games, mainly because there's no 5 conversation limit as seen with other games in the series. Now the number of characters each unit can support is relatively small, as most units can only support 1 or 2 other units. The Avatar, however, can support and be supported by every character on the roster, and there are a lot of characters in this game, 45 from the original and 32 from the remake, for a whopping 77 characters, more than likely the largest cast in the history of the series. In addition, there are 6 guidance chapters added, which all deal with an assassin group trying to kill Marth. With all the additions to the original story, New Mystery really does make a big improvement on what was already a decent story, making it my second favorite story in the entire series. Alright, on anything other than the normal difficulty, reinforcements will come in at the beginning of the enemy phase and can immediately move and attack. These are referred to as ambush spawns, and they also appear in Awakening and Binding Blade as well, and in my reviews of both I made sure to point out that I detested this feature. However, here, they are near unbearable. Most of the ambush spawns are tied to trigger points on the map, whether they be specific tiles on the map, or they might be one enemy moving, and that triggers another pack of enemies moving as well. But you won't find out what they are until you have played the map enough times or have used a walkthrough. Now, in Awakening and Binding Blade, I never had to play through a chapter or play or start a chapter more than 2 or 3 times. However, in Fire Emblem 12, it happened where I'd have to restart sometimes 5, 6 times. And this makes Fire Emblem 12 possibly the most trial-error game in the series, as many ambush spawns are put in places that can make parts of some maps a complete nightmare to go through, requiring several restarts unless you use a guide. Map design was good, not great, at least in the original chapters, for the most part. There were a couple of chapters that were annoying, but nothing too bad, at least from a map design perspective, other than the reinforcements. The guidance chapters are short, but you must speed through most of them, as they're really small, to the point that pretty much every enemy unit in a lot of them can reach any of your units on the map in one turn. A couple also have infinite reinforcements, and some have Fog of War. But these weren't too hard, as the Fog of War and infinite reinforcement mechanics were integrated decently well with the design of the map, and they were actually enjoyable. And since they're so short, by the time that it would take you to start a normal chapter, you've already would have beaten the guidance chapter, so restarting the guidance chapters wasn't that big of a deal to me. The Avatar is broken, as he'll pretty much max every stat except resistance and magic. This, in addition to being supported by every unit in the game, makes him by far the best unit in the game. In the battle preparation menu, there is a How's Everyone section, where characters talk about their current condition, they can find an item, or have a thought or two about the Avatar, adding support points to their support with the Avatar. You also have the Arcadian Chronicles, an SNES exclusive that is 4 chapters that takes place before the start of Shadow Dragon from the viewpoints of the nations of Grust, Arcanea, Aurelius, and others, and it is a neat addition to Fire Emblem 12, as the Arcadian Chronicles originally was a little game that used the SNES's internet functionality. Yeah, I know, the SNES had internet. The music in the game is definitely one of my favorite soundtracks in the entire series. The soundtrack is really good and takes advantage of the DS hardware. You also unlock the entirety of the soundtrack after you complete the game. Well, not necessarily complete, but beat it. And visually, the game uses the same engine as Shadow Dragon for battle, but the character portraits are an improvement in my opinion. And you also get some additional CG images. They're a little bit different from the paintings used in Shadow Dragon, as the ones here, specifically the ones that focus attention on Marth and Sheeta, there's a lot more detail put into them, and I really enjoyed them actually. Overall, I really love Fire Emblem 12. It's a shame it never got localized, as it had the features that Fire Emblem fans out west wanted, and is what makes this game good were parts of what Shadow Dragon lacked, which is why it didn't sell as well as Intelligent Systems had hoped. And while it isn't localized, it is at least fully translated. However, I could definitely do without the ambush reinforcements. And no thanks. I can't recommend playing through the game on any difficulty harder than the hard mode, as I don't even want to imagine the level of BS that the Maniac and Lunatic difficulty can inflict on the player. And that will conclude my review of Fire Emblem 12.